was the expectation out of a young faculty then? Was it told to you that you have to publish papers, you have to do projects? Because these days when a young person comes and joins, there are a lot more expectations out of the, yeah.
There was no expectation from me except that I have to teach this course because there is no one to teach this course. In fact, I went with a list of courses that I could easily teach. I went to Professor Rajappan, gave them. He says, this does not belong to your section, this does not belong. In fact, and say, oh, come on, no, don't worry about it. Whatever we will give you, you learn and teach. Department was very different.
Was the classification very strict? Very strict? Huh?
Though I was able to cut in for my doing work, but well, digital also was new, there was not strong, so I was allowed to teach. Communication I was allowed to teach. Electromagnetics and surface acoustic wave devices I started teaching. There was not strong faculty. Actually, I soon found out that in our department, we had a strong power and instrumentation sections. Professor V.G.K. Murthy, Kupurajulu, Professor Narayan Rao, very good. Professor V.V. Shastri. The what is called electronic sections were not that strong. Yeah, Professor Radhakrishna was there in circuits and Anthony Reddy. Rest was all right. Achyutan was there in devices, didn't do too much in devices. Communication, V.V. Rao was there, individually very strong, but there was no strong group of faculty in any of them. Digital circuits, we hardly had anything. That time, our department used to give 2 degrees, undergraduate, power and electronics. And of course, later on I helped in integrating that. It was a tough battle. But here, I was actually learning a lot of things, and for the first time had some confidence that we can build few things.
I met some students, sorry, of that period, mid-80s, who were in the power, but felt that if they had taken courses in communication or devices, because I met many people in the US who were from the power, but they took courses in devices so that they could apply. And so, that was some kind of an artificial.
Yeah, it was not easy. Yeah. But a few of them worked with me. So, working wise in the projects, etc., there was not as strong a restrictions, or number of them worked with me. Now, one of the things that at the meantime, 2 things else was happening. One was this group that when I came in and Mukundan had mentioned to me, a group called Patriotic and People Oriented Science and Technology, PPST. I became a strong part of this group. In fact, by and large, that was operating from my home. This was a group of scientists. There are few from IIT, not too many. Myself, Mukundan used to be a scientific officer at IIT Madras, Professor B. Vishwanathan from chemistry department. But there are a number of other people, Professor M.D. Srinivas, Professor M.S. Sriram, Bajaj, Professor C.N. Krishnan, who was an undergraduate student here and taught at Krompet. Number of them, we used to form together. We are all concerned about India. And we started looking at what is happening with science and technology in India. And we soon started looking at, came across a work of one Sri Dharampal. His work was very fascinating. His work was that till the 18th century, India was a very developed country. And not just developed in ordinary way, it was a very good science and technology, which came to us as a surprise because we had never heard of science and technology in India, and that too in 18th century or before. But 18th century, enough work, he had done number of books, number of things, where science and technology, he showed that science and technology flourished. And we started getting connected to that, doing work, trying to figure out what kind of learning, and all of this seems to have been destroyed not by Mughals, but by actually Britishers. And by the time of independence, all of this had gone. Dharampalji himself was a disciple of Mahatma Gandhi. Apparently, Mahatma Gandhi, in a number of his speeches, had talked about India of 18th century and the past, and had talked about how we are very strong. And Dharampalji had pursued work largely in archives in India and in Great Britain, trying to actually cull out the information about India of 1730, 1750, 1770, and gave us a very good picture. So I used to spend considerable time on that. Most of my evenings I used to work on that, used to spend a lot of time. The second thing, since I was at IIT Madras, I sort of say, might as well look at the industry. Now, how do you look at the industry? Apparently, IIT had no connection with industry. Our department practically had no connection.
So there were some defense projects.
Well, some projects were there, but I also soon realized Professor Narasimhan was doing, I worked with him, Professor Rana was doing, I was working with him, but I soon realized that nothing was going to go all the way to fruition and production.
But ICSR was there.
ICSR was not there.
Was not there.
There was some office, don't remember the name, but what happened, I had a few connection because of my family with some industry. So I remember, since I was engineer and electronics engineer, I went to Calcutta, and one of my uncles used to be a part of a company, and one day he told me, Ashok, I have this big machine which I imported and is not functioning. So I had gone with him to try to see that machine, at least figured out enough. I had no idea that what was happening and what was wrong. I had kind of pointed out what was wrong. I had gone to another relative of ours, and I had figured out that if he could change the process using something, because remember that micro mouse that had given me, I had some confidence that some things can be done. I told him what can be done to really improve his productivity. So little bit of things like this, even some of the Chennai-based industrialists got to know, and here and there I'll get an opportunity to visit some of the industry, and I'll see that. I was actually very disappointed. This was a period. Now, to understand the industry, you also need to understand India a bit. And I'm going to go back and tell you a little bit, a few little experience of mine at early period. When I came here, I wanted to buy a two-wheeler, a scooter. I had just about enough money to buy a two-wheeler scooter. And I said, in this campus, a two-wheeler will be very, very useful. Beautiful campus, full of greenery, deers. Two-wheeler will be very useful, enable me to move around very quickly. And somebody told me Bajaj Chetak is very good. So I went and saw in a shop, in a showroom of theirs, Bajaj Chetak like that. They told me about the prices, and they told me a special offer. I said, I'll buy that. They told me they were going through everything and got me to select the color, they did everything, and even I gave them the check. And I told them, when can I pick it up, or when will it be delivered? The person looked at me and said, sir, you will be in a queue. So I said, well, how long will I have to wait? 15 days, month? So no, sir, our waiting queue is 4 years. I was taken aback. I couldn't believe you have money to buy a scooter, it takes 4 years. Soon I realized that was India. There was, of course, I figured out later, after some time, through a friend of mine, through a student friend of mine, that if you had played in foreign exchange, you can get it soon. Unfortunately, I had spent all my foreign exchange. I didn't have any, but there was a defense student of ours, Rajesh Sanghi, who later became my PhD student, I will talk about it. He said that, sir, but if you have a receipt, we can still do it. I fortunately had the receipt. He went, booked it. I got the scooter in 6 months. Actually, I had paid, done receipt for 1,000, so he actually got 2 scooters, one for himself and one for myself. And in my mind, I was wondering, why, if there is a demand, why can't scooter be produced? Why should there be a waiting list? And it was not about scooter only. I wanted to get a gas cylinder for my home. I went to a place where gas cylinder booking is done. There was an old man, and I told him I've come here for booking. He says, when was your booking done? I says, no, I have not done the booking. He says, you've never done the booking. Your parents have not done the booking. He says, no, I have coming to Madras for the first time. No. He looked at me, he brought out some ledger, asked me to write down, and he very softly told me, sir, I do not think that you are going to get it in your lifetime. But still do it, this will benefit your children. Currently the people who are getting are the people who got, whose parents had booked it for them. And one of the best marriage gifts that I got later on was one of my friend, Dr. Krishnan's wife, walked in with her gas cylinder. She had 2 gas cylinders. If you had 2 gas cylinders, you can gift 1 gas cylinder to somebody else. Now 2 gas cylinders is so that when one runs out, you can use the other one. But if you are left with 1 gas cylinder, you can apply for a second gas cylinder and you can get it. So all these loopholes existed and long waiting list for everything. There was nothing that was easily available. So we realized that our industry was not even able to produce enough for the demand. And in my early interaction with industry, I soon figured out why. There was practically no technology development work done in any of these industries. Everything was just imported technology, where they got complete technology, they will get all the parts, they will just assemble and supply. And of course, they would get decent margin. Later got to know that you need a license to manufacture, and limited licenses were available. So they were, whether it was a telephone, so not just scooter, and I think before that I should talk about this telephone, because telephone will play a very important role. I was here, my parents were in Calcutta, and one of the first things that we had decided, we will get a telephone. When I came here, I was told that to get a telephone in Chennai, the 3rd largest, in Madras, that 3rd largest city in India, at IIT Madras, it is a long waiting list. And it took me 8 years to get a telephone. And it did really bite me. A lot of my work in telecom actually came from that experience. But basically what I found was that industry was just not ready, not there to move things along. Industry produced limited extent, they had licenses and all that. It is this which shaped my work at IIT Madras. There was an interesting incident, and it just happened to be in chance. I had happened to visit a factory. By now, enough undergraduate students are working with me. I happened to visit an industry and figure out they were making a power line carrier communication equipment. WS Industries. They were also importing technology, they were making it, they were selling equipment, close to 1,10,000 rupees per unit. I had understood that because by that time I had my knowledge of communication and systems had kind of prompted that what was it doing. I understood that well. There was a lecture in the city under the banner of, I think, IET, and they had invited me to give a talk. And I talked about that how our industry is importing everything. And I gave an example, for example, how this company, I didn't name it, was actually importing every component of power line carrier communication and making it and selling at ₹1,12,000. There's no R&D getting done. If that industry gave me ₹1,00,000, I'll develop the whole technology for them and give it to them in 1 year. Full system that I'll design, develop and transfer it to them. I made that statement. A newspaper apparently published this, Indian Express I think, don't remember. And a day later I get a call from the chairman, managing director of the company. I was a little worried that I had not named them, but still. He says, why don't you visit me? So I went and met him. I had already seen part of his plant. He says, Ashok, are you serious that you can win ₹1,00,000, you can actually make the? I said, I think I can. And I gave him that these are the blocks and this is what this blockhead has. He pulled out a check, wrote down ₹1,00,000 and gave it to me.
It was your first project from industry?
From first project from industry, ₹1,00,000 will be equivalent to almost ₹1 crore now. And here he betted me, hardly knew me. And he got one of his staff who was in R&D, was helping in translating into production, say, associate with him. I was taken aback. I had no clue what to do, but here I had an industry project, came back with a check. I had something like 14 undergraduate students working on it in laser communication lab in ESB for 1 year. Big table, we're making pieces and pieces and pieces. People used to work whole night. And we got guidance from this industry person, some guidance, not enough. At the end of 1 year, we are able to demonstrate a working prototype. But this was very different from what I had promised. I had said I will get the technology ready for you to manufacture. Will this be reliable? Certainly not. It used to work, it used to take us 20-25 minutes to get that to work, and it will work for 10-15 minutes and it will fail. Something which will work 24/7? No way. Something which could be manufactured? No way. Something which will be cost optimum and people will make money? We had no clue. But we had done that much. I was feeling a little bit guilty. And I got a call from the chairman of the company and say he wants to visit us. He says that I'm told that you have a working prototype ready, and I was very apologetic, and he came. I started with my apology and all that. He came, he saw it, he seemed to be very happy. His money was spent by that time, components. Undergraduate students were working, I was probably not even paying them. He was quite happy. And he said, Ashok, very happy, you have done the job, huge confidence, you just send this whole thing to me now, to my factory. I said, yes, but it's unreliable. It doesn't matter. Sir, I don't know whether you can ever make money by producing it. It's all right. Send it to me. The whole thing was shifted. Project was closed. About 2-3 months down the line, one day I get a call. So Ashok, I have some people visiting about this project. Why don't you come? I go there and I land up in a meeting with him with 3 people, I think they were from Canada, I'm not sure, they could be from the United States, from the company from which he was importing. And he was having a chat with them. I walked in and he introduced me. Here is Dr. Jhunjhunwala. He came from United States and he knows everything, technology wizard, this, that. And I was feeling very good. And he has actually developed this power line carrier communication completely from scratch on his own. And I am going to produce that in next 3 months. He went into a great pitch that this will reduce my cost. You are giving me at 80,000 rupees, this will reduce my cost to around 35,000 rupees. And it's ready. A few times I tried to open up and he will indicate to me I should just keep quiet, watching. And then he took them outside, say, I'll show you. And there was on a table, this whole thing put in a glass case. And glass case was removed and shown. Little bit working, just like what we had done in the lab. These people asked me a few questions and I knew enough about them, I could explain them. By now I knew that I don't need to speak more than that. So he went on to say that, so I'm going to produce this, I have to discontinue this product, import from you. Too bad, but other products I will continue. By the end of the day, he had signed with them to import the components of their design at 35,000 rupees.
Half the cost.
At less than half the cost. Huh?
1 lakh he spent.
Huh? So he of course brought down the price from a lakh 10 to close to 90, and his volume grew like anything. First time I realized that different facets of technology development, and I realized the mind of an entrepreneur, an industrialist, that I don't even have to really make something which is fully ready. The very fact that I can do that, that threat is enough. And our industrialists are smart enough to know, bargain, that at least it will be now imported at a lower price. You will get better prices because you have something.
You know, it's interesting that you say it because in 1987 was the 40th year of independence, and we had organized that in Toronto, and very famous constitution lawyer Nani Palkiwala came and gave a talk. You know, it was a big audience. There he said, Indian businessmen are so smart, they can buy from an Irishman, sell it to a Jew, still make a profit. I mean, Irishman and Jew are supposed to be very good with money. So he says, but something is holding back. So it's very interesting that we're talking about the same period now, 1987. Yeah.
So, but I learned, and this very fact that technology, even the start of technology development, can empower us in many, many manners. First, our undergraduate students who actually did that, they were different, very different from what earlier these people were there. Some of them even decided to stay back in India, otherwise everybody was going abroad. They actually learned to build things. I learned in the process. Industry, the person who worked with industry, Venkat Subramanian, he became a very close friend. In industry had a huge reputation by now, all over. I used to keep on getting calls from different industrialists, most of the time to fix a machine. And I had no clue what these machines were. They're all imported. They said if you have to call the technicians from there, it will cost us tons of money. And I said, what do you do with the machine if you don't call? He says, well, it's a loss. We'll leave it. And I will go with our undergraduate student, sometime with our masters, and I even had a PhD student, Krishna Tilakam. She was good. She had come from ITI. She knew a little more circuits than many of us used to know. And we'd go there and occasionally even fix the machine. Even our own institute, people used to call us, and occasionally we'll fix big machines. Simple, small electronic fault, we may be able to repair. It gave us a huge confidence that we can do things industrialists were using, and this was my first industry academia interaction.